Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial for the Learning Lab on C++ programming. In this tutorial, we're going to be learning something called the functions in C++. So what are these functions? A function is nothing but the collection of codes or the collection of statement which is given a name. So these functions allow us to group our code. Let's say you want to perform 10 tasks in your program, and at that time what you guys can do is you guys can divide your program into 10 different functions, and each function is doing specific task, and then you guys can combine your program. So if you do like this, then it's very easy to manage your program and also easy to track the bugs. In our program we have already used a function, so you guys can see here int main. This is a function we have used. So this main is the starting point of the execution in a C++ program. So whatever the function we're going to write in our program, apart from this main, it will be called from this main function. So here, to define a function, first we need to write something called the return type of a function. So here in this main example we have written int, which means that our main function is going to return an integer value, which we have done here using the return statement. And depending on the type of data your function is returning, you guys need to specify that. If your function is returning integer data, you need to specify int. If it is returning floating point data, you need to specify float. And if it is a character, then it should be char. And if your function is not returning any value, then you need to specify void. Just remember that this void is a special type, which is used for no value. Alright. So now, just to demonstrate that, we're gonna write a function in our program and use that. So first we need to write something called the return type of the function. So in this example our function is not gonna return any value, that's why it's gonna be void. Then the function name. So we can't use this main here because we have already used this main function here, and let's call it as display, and then pair of parentheses, and between these parentheses we're gonna write the parameters that are gonna taken by this display function. So in this example we're not gonna take any parameters, but in the next tutorials we're gonna be learning that. Alright, next a pair of curly braces, and between these curly braces we're gonna write the statements of this function or the actions that we want to perform in this display function. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, we're gonna print out welcome to functions, and let's add an end line. Alright, now we have a function called display. So whatever we have written between these curly braces is called as function body, and here this display function is defined before this main function. And if you want to use this display function in your main function, we need to do something called function call. And another thing is, if you define a function in your program and if you don't call it, then the statements inside that function will not be executed. To demonstrate that, I'm not gonna call this function, I'm just gonna save this and run this. So you guys can see here we got nothing. I'm gonna close it. And now we're gonna call this display function. To call a function, first we need to write the function name, display here, and then the pair of parentheses. And if this function is taking any parameters, then we need to pass that here, specify that here. In this case, no parameters, and then add a semicolon. That's it. Save it, build and run. Now you guys can see welcome to functions. I can call this display function as many times I want. For example, I'm going to copy this and paste it 2 more times and save it and build and run this. Now, so you guys can see here welcome to functions 3 times. And the next thing that I want you guys to teach is something about function prototyping. So here this display function appears or return in this source code. Before calling this display function here, we have defined or written the display function. What happens when this display function is written or defined after its call? So now when this code is executed, the execution starts from this main function and it will encounter this display. So alright, I don't know anything about this display, so this might not be defined in this source code. That's why the compiler is gonna generate some errors. So to solve that kind of problems, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do something called function prototyping. This function prototyping is nothing but declaring the function, not the function body, just the function prototype, or what is the function name, what is the return value, and what are the parameters taken by this function before calling that function in any other functions. So here, before this main function, we're gonna do function prototyping. To do that, first we need to specify the return type, which is void, then the function name, display, and any parameters, no parameters, then add a semicolon. That's it. Now if I save this, build and run this, you guys can see we got welcome to functions 3 times. So what happens here is when this function prototype is encountered, the compiler will come to know that okay, in this program there is a function called display which is not going to return any values and which is not taking any parameters, is defined somewhere else. So if I encounter this display function before its definition, then it doesn't mean that it's an error, so that is present. That's why when it encounters the display, it won't generate any errors, and the program works successfully. Alright guys, this is it. This is about the introduction to the functions in C++. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like my Facebook page at facebook.com/learninglad, and follow us on Twitter at learninglad.edu, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.